The very beautiful introduction as Masa Pule, Bonolo Pule, and today I have the honor of having a book discussion, our man of the moment. First of all, I'd like to say congratulations on publishing your second book at such a young age. That is impressive. That is very, very inspiring. So congratulations.
Thank you.
We are here because of you. So I think let's get straight into the book. So as they've mentioned, umamele, maybe it will ignite a question that you have. This is the time hore ubuze the author. Like, how many times do you buy a book and you can actually, ask the author a question that you have on the book? So let's use this opportunity wisely. Karabo, I want to first start and ask you, because this book, Conscious in Crisis, is a very hectic, deep book. A lot of things that we are scared to have conversations about, a lot of things we're scared to address, especially as the youth. It's so much easier for us to just pretend like rape is not real, to pretend like we're not still colonized or getting colonized, to pretend like all these things don't exist. So why did you write this book?
I wrote this to spark around the things that are happening around us.
And why was now an important time? We just come out of a pandemic, and we're now over the pandemic, and we must face the realities of our country and our continent. So why was now a good time to publish this book, to release this book right now?
Because it seems as though we are going backwards, if I can put it that way. There is ignorance, and so there's a need for those of us who are teachers to teach through writing and to ensure that people, it's like curing the ignorance through giving them knowledge. Yes.
Wow, okay. So today we are going to be conscious in conversation, and in the end of our session, we would like you to also please participate in this conscious conversation. I'm going to get straight into the content of the book. On page 12 in the book, right, you say that the youth of today have either two options. And I quote, you said, face everything and rise, or forget everything and run. Now tell me, as Bonolo Pule, why must I choose, because obviously facing everything is hard, why must I choose to face everything and how am I going to rise versus choosing the latter, which is obviously, I assume, the easiest option, which I just forget and I run and I continue with my life. But why should we choose the latter?
We should choose the latter because we have been paid for, and we also have a responsibility for paying for those who are yet to come. It's a matter of us living our lives by defining it, by giving, instead of us folding our arms and having this notion that life revolves around us. We have to be selfless in the sense that whatever we do today has an effect on our tomorrow. So that notion of face, writing, fear, how I define fear stems from that. So it is our decision that I'd advise though that we take the first one, because we have.
So now, how do we do that? How do I face everything and rise?
How do you face everything and rise?
As a young person.
Yeah, as a young person, we have to find our mission as a generation.
Okay.
Also defining the struggles we as young people face, because you have to remember that our elders had one enemy, which was oppression in the sense of apartheid. But now we have many enemies, ourselves, Nyaupe, and the list goes on. You can name all of them. And so the notion comes into realizing that your existence is a meaning that you can contribute to change that we seek, ordinary as you might think of yourself.
Okay. Yeah, that is quite a lot to take in. But if there's anything that I think is a step in the right direction is us having the conversation, right? And not just being social media activists, but also trying to have these conversations amongst ourselves, because it starts, but a charity begins at home, so we need to start having these conversations, and I think we applaud you for starting the conversation, because look at us, we're having this conversation right now. So with that being said, my next question is, you speak a lot about the value of women, right? So I want us to unpack this, because especially in this country with the GBV statistics crazy, what do you mean by the value of women? And in the book, you sort of mention materialism, you mention slay queens, you mention blessers. So according to you, what is the value, like the true value of women in our society, or what should it be rather?
Let me say, rather, a woman, what defines her in one sentence is that whatever it is that she's a part of, or that she creates, she can expand. Women are the first teachers. Women are creators. All of us are here because we have been birthed by a woman, and that on its own sets the standard on why it is that we should respect women and also educate ourselves on her value, so that we may actually recognize the power that she plays or has in our country.
My follow-up question was actually going to be, how do we teach women their value? Because we live in a society, we live in a very patriarchal society where, women are at the bottom of the leader chain, whether it's in like corporate, in organizations, everywhere. So how do we teach young women, how do we teach women that are old what their value is? How do we help them see their value?
I think it starts in families. We have to ensure that there are certain values, principles, or whatever you term it, that comes with education beginning at home. And then also once we are able to instill that sense of value in them from the family, we can be able to go to other organizations, a broader society. So the foundation of that education stems in the structure of our families.
Sure. So it's charity begins at home again.
Charity begins at home, yeah.
And it's quite a heavy thing, because it's not an easy thing we can say, today I'm going to wake up and I know my value, right? But what is the importance of us continuing to have this conversation, or us questioning women's value, like in society, especially now with things that, like you mentioned in your book, how slay queens and blessers have become the norm, and how do we go to people addressing those issues without coming across as judgmental or coming across as, you know what I mean? Because people can feel very defensive if I go to someone and say, listen, Ausi, so re sebetsa jwang taba eo?
Re sebetsa in a sense of in that case, it's both genders, or whatever you may call it, involved. So we have to educate us as men. We have to go back and teach men of their value, because it's very rare that you'll find a man who will tell you that he knows himself. All they think of as control, and dominating and whatever, but also in a toxic way. But how can we teach ourselves as men to display our masculinity in a way that does not do harm to the environment? And that will enable us to actually have that self-education, because when you respect yourself, eventually, automatically you have respect for the other person. So I think it starts with also how men perceive themselves. That will set the tone in terms of what's happening. Because today, men measure their lives according to the money they have. So we have to change this notion.
Sure, that is so deep. Would you say that we come from a nation of broken men? Because I know that's a very bold statement to make, but I'm wondering because sometimes, certain things manifest themselves in toxicity, So maybe the problem is healing. Maybe we haven't healed. Maybe our men haven't healed. Maybe we haven't healed. Maybe our mothers and grandmothers have not healed, which is why we cannot which is why we're accepting things that are not for us. Mm-hmm. Would you say?
I'd say, yeah, it's also this indoor criminal acts and so forth. But the main challenge, or what people should how can I put it, contribute to, is to ensure that men, young boys, there's a re-education and also unlearning of young boys in terms of how they perceive women, in terms of how they see themselves. Because I think also if we can have conversations whereby we motivate young boys, perhaps we'd see light in terms of, and the decrease also in the depression, the suicide rates, the nyope, and all of those things. I think there's a need for us to be conscious in terms of what we say to boy children from now on.
I think that's a very valid point, because you also talk about how oftentimes, right, in cases where, let's say something bad happens to a female, the question is always, what was she wearing, what was she doing, and it's never the man who is at fault. So I think maybe the problem here is that because women have been victimized so much, right, we've put the light on them even though they are the victims, but we need to now take the light and shine it on men and ask them the real questions, because it doesn't help. You're putting more light on the victim, but they're the victim. Do you think that is achievable? Or do you think it's a mission that we have to start with the young boys that are probably going to be coming now after us? Because, they say, there's a saying in English that says, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So, we need be honest with ourselves. Can we bring really, realistically speaking, can this happen? Can we at least try?
I think we have to break the mindset of society. How does society think? And then we come to how do women think? And then we come to how men think. Because also with regards to that, we have rape apologists. And what's more shocking is that in this country, there are actually more women who are rape apologists in the country, much more than men, When a woman is wearing a short skirt, they'll say, no, she wanted it, whatever. Those comments come.
Yeah, they come from other women.
Yes, from other women, So we have to break down those notions in a sense that we evaluate in terms of how do men think, how do women think, and what are some of the practices of society that we have carried along from generations that came before us. Because I think also the problem is generations that came before us were not questioning things.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So, and also not being open with us. So it becomes difficult for us to root the problem and where this mentality and this thinking stems from. So I think we have to go back there and then realize on where it is actually that we lost it. That's reflecting in how things are happening in the country now.
I think from what I'm getting is that we have to, as a society, create safe spaces for men, because unfortunately, in most cases, I'm not going to say, GBV is just on women, but the majority of the numbers, the majority of the statistics, men are the problem. So I think we have to create safe spaces for men to know that, to unlearn, so that they can relearn and adapt to new ways of doing things, because essentially, we need to stop treating women like imbogot. We need to start treating women like eggs. Yeah. You must treat your mother, your wife, your sisters as eggs, because that's what we are. And I think it's very, at least it's encouraging to see, you speak up on these things, because hopefully that will encourage other men, to be vulnerable enough or to go inside themselves and to be like, you know what, maybe we are the problem, but how can we contribute to being part of the solution? Especially considering the rape situation. You have numbers in here, and it's unbelievable. It's really, really unbelievable. And you mentioned how a lot of things in our communities, in churches and stuff, are taboo, right? So how do we not make these things a taboo? According in your book, you say something is a taboo. Let's unpack that.
Mm-hmm. I think we have to make those who think that some things should be a taboo uncomfortable. Yeah, we have to poke the snake in its hole. That's what we have to do.
Yeah.
Yes, to challenge that notion that no, you cannot conversate about such things. Because the thing is, with not conversating, it makes even people who are rape victims to not have the capacity to speak out, because of how it makes them look as if they are to blame for what has transpired. So I think there's a need for us to create safe spaces in our surroundings, in our society.
And this is very institutionalized as well, because like you were saying, Guti, and I've seen this happen as well, where police officers will tell a woman who's going to report abuse or something that, come back, Hussein, like, that is very discouraging, because it's like, dude, I'm trying to report that I'm being abused, and you're telling me to come back tomorrow, or you're telling me to come back next week, which does not make me feel safe at all. It does not make me feel safe in the justice system. It does not make me feel safe in the government at all. So just to touch on the mission that you guys did when you sent a memorandum to the government, right? How can movements like that actually help in pushing this conversation forward? Because we can see that the problem is also in the systems of this country, not just the men or,
I think it's an awakening of consciousness amongst our youth to understand that it's not that there are certain people who are responsible for doing things a certain way, but taking responsibility in your personal capacity to say that, you know what, as much as I have not experienced this, as much as this has not happened to somebody who's my friend, who's my family member, or anybody close to you, but that this affects somebody on the street who's a citizen of this country, to like resurrect that sense of sympathy, that sense of love for country. Because the thing is, we have this thing now whereby if it doesn't affect, amongst our generation, where we have this notion that if it doesn't affect me, I don't give a damn about it. So we have to challenge that notion that let's really restore the spirit of Ubuntu, because Ubuntu has become a brand today. So I think it comes with restoring that sense of Ubuntu and also love for country, love for your people.
So you're very passionate about the youth, and obviously this is a call to the youth to find what their mission is. So how do you convince me that as just a regular person I can bring about some sort of change, because it needs to start somewhere with someone, so how do we convince those people?
We convince them in educating them that as ordinary as they might think they are, that they are capable, that this is a collective work, not an individual work. Even with conscious in crisis, everybody who's going to read the book today must make a vow or an obligation to educate others through the content unpacked in there. It does not end with me. I'm not the Moses who's going to carry you to the promised land, but all of us collectively can attain whatever it is that we want to see become a reality. So it's that notion that wherever you come from, however you may perceive yourself, you are capable. It's a collective work.
Speaking of that, because to identity nyana. So let's jump into chapter 4 of your book. The title of this chapter is The Colonizers Never Left. Right? So obviously in my head I'm like, yeah. I when I was reading the book, I'm like, yeah, it's going to talk about white people, to my surprise, you're talking about the Chinese, right? And I think a lot of us are not aware of the Chinese situation. And I think it's something that I told you that I was also not really familiar with. I mean, we know of this and that, but we're not really aware how deep or how serious this thing is. So in chapter 4, who is the colonizer? Who is...
You've mentioned it, but it's not only them. I think it's foreign powers. But in this book, I focus specifically on them because I'm able to research and have my points out there regarding on what they're doing in the country.
Kubolifa warning, chapter 4 is... it's a mouthful, but it's very insightful. It has a lot of information that I didn't even know. I was like, what? This is happening in my country that I didn't even know. Why was it so important for you to touch on the Chinese especially? Because you speak a lot about us finding our identity. So even in your speech you mentioned how they want to incorporate Mandarin, sorry. Mandarin in our schools, whereas our own indigenous languages are not even, promoted as much. So why was it so important to put this in the book?
Because of how we are drifting further and further away from our identity, because the thing is we are welcoming of anything but African, really. That's why people are now open to learning Mandarin now, much more than being open to learning Swahili, which is the most spoken language in Africa, Mm-hmm.
So you feel like language is basically so tied to our identity?
It is.
So language is something that we need to preserve, we need to...
Because with language, there's our history. With language, there are stories that have been foretold by those who came before us, our ancestors. They have been passed, because the thing is also, we as Africans don't document our stories. So the thing that makes language to be so valuable is that our stories have been passed on from generation to generation through language, So language is a huge part of identity. So we cannot afford to lose it.
And basically what I got is that we are being sold without our knowledge. Like we think that you live in a country, you think, but who is selling us? And how do we deal with that? I think it also goes back to what Me was saying, Jorge. We need to, stop putting the wrong people in power, because we find ourselves in this situation because of our political leaders, unfortunately.
Because the thing is, our ancestors were colonized through wars. There's a whole Shaka Zulu, and they were colonized by guns and weapons and so forth. But we are being colonized through our leaders, through having table meetings with the Chinese. They look out for their interests, while these loans are actually going to have consequences for the people who are living in this country. And it's evident, I'm sure.
Sure. Like, the content of this book is quite heavy, like I said, but it's serious things that we do need to start thinking about, because we are the future, and if we don't try to do something to protect our future, towards the end, there's light. You say we must organize and rise and all of that. Let's unpack that and what you mean and how we can do that.
What I mean by that is that all of us, young and old, this is our country. So, and for as long as you are alive, to expand this generation. So for as long as you are alive, realize, okay, you can make a difference. You know, that's what I'm saying. Let today restore the sense of love for our country, the sense of love for our continent, to understand that we are here today because somebody whose name you don't even know came before you and ensured that today you are in a white school, as they call it, you know, and you live wherever you went to because somebody paved the way. So we also have a responsibility of paving the way for those who are yet to come. That's what we should define our lives by.
And I think just to add on to what you're saying, if we're not doing it for everybody else, let's do it for our own families.
Yes.
Do it for your mother, do it for your siblings, do it for your cousins, you know, do it for your friends. If that maybe connects us more to the mission versus me saying I'm going to save the whole of South Africa.
Definitely, because you started in the families, there's a link eventually. And you see the winds of change coming because of planting those seeds in the families and everywhere, where whatever space you may occupy, whether you're in school, at workplaces, do what you can, but do it from a place of love.
Love conquers all. So what I'm getting from today and this conversation is that we need to just really be aware and give love and know that we shouldn't just be social media activists. You know, let's sign a petition. That's great, but how are we actively trying to bring about change? And you don't have to change the whole of South Africa. You don't have to change the whole of Gauteng or Free State, no. You can start at home, change your house, change your family, change yourself. And earlier you said, be the change that you want to see. So I hope that, you know, reading this book for everyone will be a sort of a moment of introspection where we get to look at ourselves and say, yes, I might not think I have the power, but what can I do? Something as little as changing someone, like even if it's one person's life, that is enough. And we need to practice that. And with that being said, then leaving nothing for you when you read it, we can open the floor to the audience for questions, if you have any.
Restoring a sense of love for ourselves, then for our people, and then for our country. Because the thing is, this unity talk has become a brand. You know, it's something people are always talking about, but it's never something that people are actually prepared to live by, you know. So I think there is that, like looking out for your neighbor, you know, looking out for others that can actually give us that sense of like changing things around. And also understanding that as ordinary citizens, we are capable, you know. This country is our country, and if we don't care, who will care? So it's us, all of us, in whatever industries we may occupy, we have to be the voice of the voiceless. We have to really just challenge the status quo. So that's how I would answer that question.
There's another question.
What you said to me. But I've got a problem to our South Africa. How can we solve each other, ourselves? Give us a light and speak it louder so they can hear. The problem of the people is, we are African people, but the worst part is, we don't love one another. We don't look at the same height as each other. Because you're driving a Luma, you're driving BMW, I'm driving a Baki 1400, he's driving that, but there's a problem that it is in our country. Who are you? What can you tell me? First, look at what you are driving. Do you understand? We've got that problem. We forgot that you can drive a Luma, but go back where you come from. What are they driving? The problem of us is we never think for each other. We never love for each other. Because why? Mang batli jwetso ra nna ke phila ke le wa. Mara tšhelete e fela o tla o mong a re kopa o kadime ke batla machonisi ba o gopola o blind. So I need your loud words. How must we solve ourselves as Africans? We're sitting here. She come from her problem. She got her problem. I've got my own problem. But now, all the problems when I look at my eye, it's the same problem of what should we do as an African, as a black continent? I need your help because you are very brave to guide us. Guide us while you're sitting on the podium, please.
We have to go back to being as human as we can be. We have to put politics aside. We have to put religion aside. We also have to put materialism aside. Being as human as possible. Understanding that all of us have souls. And it's not what's outside or whatever shelter that you live in that matters. Or whether you are driving a car or whether not. But the fact that we are human. And that what affects you also affects me, restoring that sense of I am because you are. So that's how I've answered the question.
Good afternoon. My name is Usbuso Manwa, and before I get to say anything and ask anything, I'd like to say congratulations. What you have done here is massive, and I hope this is the beginning of a ripple effect in terms of us young people questioning ourselves. And I'd also like to say that you're soft-spoken, but your writing is very loud, and I've been enjoying reading your book for the past week. We live in a country where it's evident that there is an oppressed, So we do not want to be ignorant and say there isn't an oppressor. And the question I'd like to ask you is, doesn't have a simple answer. Maybe this is a start of a dialogue that we need to start as young people, stemming from your book, because I'd like to think that is what your book does. It provokes dialogue, especially amongst young people. And it's difficult to phrase yourself when you have eyes looking at you. So I try to phrase this properly, and also this question I'd like for us to even discuss further beyond this. We're living in communities where there'd be a black businessman who gets a contract and exploits the workers. They go to town, they get white people exploiting them. You get into systems, into corporate, where they're black, white, and Indian exploiting a black, white, or Indian worker. So now you asked a very important question in the book, that what is our mission as the generation of today? And we need to discover that. I want to ask this question specifically because of all of these multifaceted problems that we have in society. Who is the oppressor today, and how do we identify them? Thank you.
The oppressor today is our own. Our own in the sense that of our own leaders. We have leaders who remember us when they are campaigning, and then canvassing about our problems. And after they occupy those positions, we are nothing. So today, our oppressor is our own black people. I think I've answered your question.
My name is Bopelo. Ke mohlakwana Pule di sema mana ngwatana. Motho a sa jeng seng ngwatana sa mabane ya tlaga. O tlaga mo. Ke motshare ya tla ho time ruthi e moholo le e menyane. Ke motho kwa napa le mosito. In essence, that is who I am, which is identity. Now, you very much emphasize the question of what is our mission as youth, right? our forefathers, our mothers, grandparents, their mission by then was to fight white supremacy, right? Apartheid. I would like to think that our mission now, our mission now as the youth would then be identity. Why is it that as our parents were fighting the white supremacy, their stories, their language, as you've mentioned, their culture, have all gone down to the drain, right? And we as the youth are out here finding our identity through materialistic things. So if each and every one of us here gathered as the youth find our identity by knowing our clan, maybe then we'll have a reason to live, a reason to find change. But also, the problem with that is that knowing yourself as Africans, African teachings also have patriarchy in it. African teachings also have all the rape situations hidden under underage marriage and all sorts. So we're coming into a world whereas we are conflicted, whereas we need to include our African teachings from home, still from home, and clashing with the westernized culture. Now my question to you would then be, how do we correlate and bring that about without causing matters and making them worse than where we are right now?
To challenge those practices or those ways of life of the old generations, to say that we take what is good out of our traditions, but we will do away with also some of these things. We have to do that because now it is obvious to us on what is right and what is wrong, and also what benefits us, what harms us. And also we have to understand that like those who came before us, they were human, you know. So we have to stop this thing of holding them in a glass, you know, as if they never made mistakes. So we have to confront the mistakes that they made, learn from them, also while taking some of the lessons they have given over to us that are of great value to us as a generation. So I hope I've answered the question.
My name is Karabo. I just wanted to add something on what said about the things that are happening when someone gets a car and stuff. I think we need to go back to educating ourselves with regards to the things that happened before. I think there are so many resources out there. There's so much information about history. Like the other time I read about the Willie Lynch letter, where they were talking about how to oppress black people in terms of how to control their minds and everything, how to make them fight against each other. So if we can go back to educating ourselves as a society, we will then learn this is where the problem is. Let us uproot, let's go back to the information. Let's find the root to what is happening, why this is happening now, and then we can now have that conversation that what's his name, Busiso, is talking about, that we need to have a dialogue. I think this book has opened doors for us to have more more information coming from us, more chats, more education, I guess. So I would say, let us go and educate ourselves. Let's go and find more information. We can have that dialogue and we can teach ourselves. Correct, this is where the root is. So if we can look back where the whole thing is coming from, we can actually teach one another that it's not your fault that you're acting, you are behaving like this. I think in psychology, we are being taught about behavioral patterns, why people behave in a certain manner. But I think if we can have that, if I can educate her, she can educate someone, and I think and I believe that us being here, we are being educated about things that we do not know of. And I believe me going back to Rustenburg, I'm going to educate other people about what I've been taught here, right? So I think let's go back to the roots, the root problem. What causes this? Why this? Then we would understand that she's behaving in this manner because of this. So before I can be judgmental about this, how about I take her and educate her about this, you know? And you said something about love. Love conquers all. And this is my niece, Petunia. I always teach her about communication and just a whole lot of things. But in most cases, when she does her things, I would normally hold her hand before I actually shout at her, because there are certain things that I would want to like shout at her for. But me holding her hand, showing her that I am not really like reprimanding you in a harsh manner, but I need you to see that what you're doing is wrong. So I think what you said about love, it should start there, you know. But the most important thing, let us teach ourselves, let's educate ourselves about things that we need to know about as a society.
With her saying that, I'm very passionate about psychology actually, because I realized that actually to colonize a person, you have to colonize their mind. And I think I've found that the problem with a lot of black people is that they were able to colonize our minds, and that's why they won. Because as a black person, I want to tell you today, you are very powerful, and that's why they oppress you. You are powerful naturally. God-given, you are very powerful. So they had to oppress your power because they saw your power. But we need to go back to our minds and fight the battle there before we can fight the battle in reality. Because that's how they win. And I think it's very important to educate ourselves, because we've been colonized to a point where, just to go back to the point that was mentioned earlier, we don't care about each other. You know, there's something like xenophobia is a thing in South Africa. And for me, I cannot grasp the concept, because how can you tell someone in their continent that they're not at home? You know, so it's little things like that where we are turned against each other, and that is where the problem starts. But if we start with our mind, you know, and try to decolonize, because I think I was having a conversation with Karabo the other day, and I was saying that I think also trauma is it becomes genetic. You know, we are a generation, we didn't go through apartheid, we were not there, but some of us are still angry. Some of us are, because we've inherited the pain, we've inherited the trauma from our parents. So I think I get why we find ourselves in an identity crisis, because we are the generation that has to decide, okay, who are we, what are we taking, what are we not taking, you know, that is actually gonna push us forward. But to do that, we have to be united. We have to realize that is where our power lies.
But also, I think, with adding on to that, I think there's also a need for us to do away with tribalism, you know, because that on its own, even before we go to xenophobia, you know, when somebody mentions Umxhosa,
yeah,
Umsuthu, Umzulu, Mafenda, you know, you know, it sparks certain attitudes. From back.
Stereotypes.
Yes, and that on its own, it created a barrier, you know, because of our cultures or our languages, we're different. We never look for things that can unite us. Rather, we are always looking for things for differences amongst us. Whereas, at the end of the day, there's no, on the map, actually somewhere like this, we all Africans.
Exactly.
And I think that's the conversation we have to create. Okay, your identity, does it end with being Umtswana, Umsuthu or not? No.
I think it also goes back to, before you are anything, you are a human being. And we need to remember that and be rooted in that, because yes, there is Zulu, Kizulu, Kimuzulu, Kimusotho, Kimuing, and we should be proud of our heritage. But at the end of the day, division, united we stand, divided we fall, and that's literally what we're seeing happen, because something like tribalism is what's dividing us, you know, and it's working towards or for the oppressor instead of for us. And those are things, the barriers that we need to break. Yeah. Any more questions? Okay, I'll come back to this table. Can we go there?
Greetings to everyone. I'm Ayanda. I just want to go back to your statement of we have issues such as GBV because men are broken, as we may say, and we need to create a safe space for them. But how do we tackle toxic households? Because as we said, we all come from a woman, and sometimes you might be like raised in a household that's toxic, which leads to trauma. And as much as we can't excuse certain things, trauma does have an impact on certain things that you do, such as the GBV, feeling the need of control. So how do we tackle that as the youth? Whereas we know that, okay, you can't go up to your mother and say, oh, you're toxic, I'm leaving this household. So how do we go about that?
Confrontational with the fact that we are wounded, that there's a need for us to heal, to heal generations that came before us, our parents, our grandparents, and so forth, so that we may heal ourselves, because we are wounded. It reflects in the depression in the country, and the list goes on. So I think there's that sense of there's a need of restoring the need for us to really heal and have those difficult conversations of toxicity, and breaking down those barriers in terms of building that kind of family structures and society that allow it.
And just to add to what Karabo was saying, I think also we need to allow grace for the generations that came before us, because they have things that they haven't healed from, and sometimes they project that on us. But because we are aware and we are more conscious, right? We need to forgive them and understand that sometimes it's not because they want to be toxic, but it's because of the trauma. They don't know how else to take it out. So it comes out in certain ways, and I think us allowing grace for that and doing better than they did is how we can move forward as a society and heal ourselves. And hopefully in us healing ourselves, we can also heal them if we live to see the day.
This book, right, is written for us as people. Whether you're young, whether you're old, it's written for the people, right? But I must mention that it is the first book that I purchased that is written in the first point perspective. My question to you would be like, how important was it for you to write it from your perspective, whereas you're motivating us and asking us to step up to the plate, that we make an action about it? How important was it that you write it on your perspective of first person?
It's me saying it, a young person, so understanding that my voice, because the thing is, Mam Zinzi mentioned something that the first instrument all of us were given is your voice. So she continued to say that whenever someone tries to silence you, be as loud as possible. So by me writing in that objective, as you mentioned, it's by me coming with all the young people and people who are rape victims, my people who are oppressed, my people who want to rise, my people who are fighting battles, my people who are suffering from the social ills in the country, and I'm taking them with me. And I'm saying that this is what we're facing, but this is also what we are capable of achieving as a people.
I arrived late, I'd like to know about neo-colonialism. It's what's striking me right now. It's really, really, really giving me goosebumps, because when you gave me the background of your book, I had to go and do my research on the word. I was new to it. And then when I got to, get the meaning, it actually talked about being pressurized by the former colonies, So I'd like to know, how do we fix that? I mean, like you said, they are just, colonizing us now, and we are the former, country that were colonized before. So how do we fix that? Do we let that happen again?
But I think also we are on a great route in terms of fighting for our identity, because the one thing that our parents' generation has done right is to give us African names. I'm sure we are that generation of black Africans who bask with pride with regards to their names. You know, even though white teachers sometimes they see Kiamukhetsu or whatever, and then they want to mention it in some funny ways. But that's our names, and it's created room for the matter that we are here, and we are not going anywhere. You know, and yeah, I think it's that sense of like having for us to like fight for that, but we are coming. There's still hope.
It's not gonna happen all today, but we are getting there. We are going. We must just start the mission. Okay. Do we have any more questions?
Hello guys, my name is Sibisisiwe Khatebe. We know that in society we have a problem where women are treated different than men. Things that women do will be seen as a disgrace, but with men it will be praised. We know that there is a mentality where when men are young, they are praised for sleeping with older women. How do we change that mentality from the beginning? How do we stop it from happening again with the next generations?
We evaluate on the education that we teach others, like family members or like whoever is impacted by what you mentioned, because it is a reality. I think it's challenging the notion that education ends at school or in learning institutions, that we have to learn also at home and also challenge some of the notions in our families and also in terms of how society thinks, because that is a societal problem. So we have to question on why is it that we have reached to that point, and also how do we confront and find solutions to that.
Myself again. I'm not trying to attack you, but as far as I know about this book, as the lady did talk before you be on a platform, we like whatever that is in the book, but I think you are leaving something behind. When are you writing a book that can direct our families or our Africans? Because Africans, we are selling ourselves. We are selling ourselves, and you don't realize. Please try to bring the book that talks about the hairstyle and the earrings.
But I doubt there's a book coming from me after this one. I gave you a lengthy book like this.
No, it needs to be huge, because we used to pick up the heavy stuff. But now at least if we can, let's try to uplift something about the religion. Our South Africans are doing out religion. You see this thing of, it's killing us. The copycats. To copy something that is not in your grandfathers. It's killing us. Hairstyle that we are having on the ladies, our children, it's killing us. There's a many different styles that are directing us on straight to hell. As we are Christian, how many times we keep on praying about the devil, but while my child or our children is directing us to the devil. But we say, no devil, I cast you in the name of Jesus, no devil. But please, my brother, I'm not trying to oppress you or be wrong, but yes, I know what you're trying to see here. We're trying to look at how men, women, every who is in this book behave. That's talking about here. But now there's something missing out. How is our hairstyle look? Have to look. Mamel, there's the one idea that I know. I know our young ladies, they like to have this beautiful hairstyle, but the hairstyle will end up covering one eye. What is the sign of that? I pay for this book, the money must also go for the text.
Another one.
Another book.
I think that was heavy.
My man, I can't let my daughter to put earrings. There's a hole for hearing. But to put earrings to where are you going? Where are you going? Where are you running? Where are you going? Where are you going? I want to try to say about mamela. About mamela samu. But chele chamu mamela. Isi mamela. I was going to nix. Untela kontu. What lo mamela? What lo tamu? Mari kiori mamela. So bari mazula rona bari ari tlabeng ditsebe re buleng mazula ka tseo mazula rona a ile a tlhaba a bula so our children they having they know the ring. Please let's have it in here. Why we discard we cut out, we curse ring again. Ibatang ring Khomo ibatlang earring mo. Ibatlang earring mo. Ba feti rala fair. Au thula ngwana ha o tlo senya. O tlo drive a wrong direction. 1 2 3 4 But those are men the page the X.
I think Khonali phase. I think the first phase we are at right now is addressing the problem, and talking about it, and then phase 2 here. Okay. Baba, pressure engata ngwaneso. Yeah. Ausi mamela o unpack hore. But there's a lot, and I think that also goes back to identity. We see something and re bona e re khahla re okay, e re le nna ke shambe the cow style but hopefully we'll get there one day. There was a question at the back, a hand at the back. Yes.
Yeah, my name is Semima Pike. I'm a district official. I think I met Abdi Karabo during our Career Expo, if you still remember. Yeah. Now, thank you very much for inviting us here. My question is centered around when I was looking specifically, I think it's chapter 5, page 168. It's on the horrific nightmare of our society. When I was looking at that particular chapter, what struck me the most was around the issue of, when women being raped, how do we then begin to say, how do we address, or what role as men can we play to play a role in safeguarding our own women? But the point where I'm coming from is around the issue of the fact that where does this issue of rape emanate from? Because remember that some of these particular problems, and I'm not a sexist in this particular case, women must get me very clearly here. It emanated because of some of the issues that you spoke about in terms of the broken families. Issue of alcohol abuse in the families, issues of marriage dysfunctional, where you find that a young boy will be left without a father, becoming fatherless. and that particular boy will not have a sense of belonging. This particular boy will be abused one way or the other. And all this particular anger builds in this particular boy child, that he grows up with this particular anger in him. And he then finds, when he's now matured, he's now a grown-up person, find a way in which he will then can display this particular anger out of himself. And then that's where they will then start to then turn this particular anger against women. So all these particular issues that some of them you actually made mention of, we need to find a way in which, from the upbringing of our own kids, how do we then find a way in which we can best bring our boy child so that they begin to respect the girl child, you know? Because until such time that we then begin to address that particular issue of respecting each other, just from an early age, issue of being able to belong to a particular family, because you also spoke about Ubuntu in your book, where that Ubuntu has diminished. Remember, if that particular boy is now no longer having somewhere where he can belong, because somewhere in the past we used to have a situation where if there was no parents in a particular family, the neighbor will take care of that particular family. Now all that Ubuntu has gone out of the window. And now this particular boy child grows up with this anger harboring in him. And he's got nowhere to then take out this particular anger, except when he looks next to him, he then sees a girl child. And that's where he'll then begin to take this particular anger on him. Or in terms of the issue of alcohol abuse, where it sounds normal that the father will come back on Friday and beat the mother in front of this particular boy child. And it sounds normal, or it looks normal. So all this particular kind of things that are happening in our community, we need to find a way, because all these things, they're broken up. They're no longer there. How do we then begin to come together and begin to build so that the mentality of this particular boy child tend to then respect the girl child? So that's where I'm bringing this particular point to you, to say, how do we then begin to say, how can we as an individual, as a community, as an institutions, that you also make mention of in your book, in terms of churches that are no longer taking the role that they used to. How do we then begin to reclaim all that particular kind of culture that we used to have? Thank you.
You know, presidents of the country, not all of us are going to become political members who, you know, get to change the world on a larger scale, but it starts at home. It starts with me. It starts with my circle of friends. It starts with my family. And that's what I took away from this, and I hope that's what we all took away from it. We can all make a change, but it just starts with us. So let us be conscious in crisis and be better people, do better for ourselves and for those who come after us. But thank you so much to everyone who came to the book, and thank you so much to everyone who was also engaging. Everyone else, I guess, will engage with the actual book.
Yeah, you will go through the initiation of being conscious in a crisis.
You know, but yeah, thank you so very much, and let us continue the conversations, guys. Let's not be scared to call things out for what they are, because unfortunately the future is ours and we have to take it and own it. Thank you so much.
Chomise how di right from today tshwantse re bana le chomise jang tse right. Hai le bohale bana ba. Mama. Hey, baby girl, you did well. I was like, yeah, no. If I could be young again, I would want to be like you. You did well. Thank you so much. And to good students, everyone who asked questions, thank you for participating. For those who didn't ask questions, thank you also for participating. You participated in listening, they participated in speaking, but kanye, we all participated, and for that, thank you.